Okay, we got a bunch of folks joining us. I am going to put a link in the chat to our presentation if you would like to join along. I would encourage you to join along just so that you can click on any sort of hyperlinks that may be floating around in the chat, or not in the chat, in the presentation. I'm going to try to stay on top of presenting while folks are coming in. But what I'd like to just preface is that this is going to be initially a lot of me talking at you. I know a lot of you have been using SDPC for quite some time and you are super users. However, some things have been changing within the registry, and as we start a new school year, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're kind of approaching it with the same scope and lens so that we aren't duplicating efforts and kind of slowing each other down. So that's my hope. So I'd like to welcome you to the USPA monthly meeting, September 2022. This tiny URL is going to be in the bottom corner for the next couple of slides in case you'd like to join us. And then it's also linked in the chat. If anybody would like to be my assistant, and every so often if somebody asks for the presentation link, if you could copy and paste it or something. But if you would also like to have some sort of a dialogue in the chat, I'm not going to be able to really do that because I want to keep it moving. But there will be some times where I would like for you to have conversations with one another about certain things while we're going through this. Okay, so I am, like I've said, John Lyman. I'm a student data privacy trainer at USPE. Before we begin, I would like all of you to know that we have created this resource, and I would like for you to share it with your users, your teachers. And why isn't it working right now? Oh, it's not working. My little video. There we go.
Ask Before You app.
Well, I want to thank you, panel, for all of your wonderful ideas and suggested tools. Hopefully, those of you in our audience are leaving today ready to deploy some of these ideas in your classroom. We'll see you next year.
Steve, what a great conference.
I agree.
I can't wait to start using some of those tools.
Me either.
Especially SuperLearn. I know my 5th graders will benefit from it.
Yeah, it looks like a really great program.
Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever clicked I agree to terms of service or shared student data with a third party without a data sharing agreement in place? Utah educators just like you want to get the best tools in the hands of their students, but Utah Law 53E-9-309 requires districts and charters to have a data sharing agreement in place with any third party that collects student information. What can you do before using a new application or website? Check the approved application list for your district or charter school, or contact your data manager. Familiarize yourself with your policies and procedures to protect your students and school from data breaches. Remember to ask before you app.
Okay, so that was fun and silly, and I created it for you.
Ask
and
before
it's not
you
gonna
app.
stop. There we go. So that's kind of the preface. What I'm hoping is that we can have that kinds of conversation with the faculty members that we work with, is that they need to be able to ask you before they go forward and click I agree. So what we're trying to get to here is I'm going to talk about what I'm coining the yes process. We want to get to a yes. So what's step one? Well, step one is the teacher requests an app. Step two is that I want you to check the Utah Applications menu. If you don't know what that is, we're going to talk about that. And actually, we're recoining that the USPA Applications, approved applications menu. Step three, if it's not on the applications menu, then we want you to search the database. If it is in the database, then we are going to have you set up a new agreement with the vendor. I really want to talk about spending some time talking about what we're looking at in a contract with a vendor. I want to make sure that you are uploading and signing and completing agreements with vendors so that if anything happens and goes wrong, you're covered. And then step 6, which is we're going to talk about, is renewal. Renewal is a process that we need to spend some time on. So we're going to be talking about these. So these are our 6 steps. Throughout each one of these steps, we're going to be talking about, as you can see, step 1, that USPA shared drive That will give you access to all of the resources. Step 2 is the Utah Applications menu. We'll talk about that. That's something that all of you should have access to and should be using. It should be kind of the first place that you go to see what is available to you here in Utah as far as agreements go with, as you can see, state contracts, badges, and parental consent. Step 3, searching that national database. And I want to remind you that if you want to search that national database, there now is that wall where you need to be logged in. Step 4 is the NDPA. Some of you out there we're floating around, and I'm not talking the you, I'm talking the very generalized you of all of our LEAs. Some of you out there still using some of our older models of the contract. And so I'd like for us to get on the same page with using the correct contract. For those of you that are just arriving, we are recording this. It's going to be on YouTube, and I've got this. You can join us on the presentation. Step 5 is adding a new agreement. I know that Tammy, who just came in, she's in the process of adding a new agreement as we speak. And then step 6, renewals. And then if we've got time, we've got Q&A, but I'm going to tell you I've got 91 slides, and we're just going to have to bust through this. So step 1, teacher requests an app. What happens at your agencies? What does your procurement infrastructure look like? Now, some of you are big districts, some of you are small charters. What is that process? I want you to think about this. And this is something that if you want to jump into the chat and say, I need help with this, what is something that you guys do that makes it work easier for you? This is an opportunity to collaborate. But I want you to be thinking about this. Who at your agency is involved in the decision-making process? And we've got some identifiers down there at the bottom. Do you have maybe a curriculum specialist? Somebody that says, yeah, this is a good product. This is really designed for 6th graders. Somebody in IT that wants to make sure that it's secure. Somebody in administration or finance that makes sure that they want to pay for it, that you have money for it. I know that at Jordan School District, they have all sorts of different tiers of things that they go through before they can procure something. So I want you to kind of analyze what your situation is with that. When would we need a data privacy agreement? Well, Utah law requires that certain privacy protections be included when entering into agreements. So the key words here are entering in agreements. That means anytime that you're sharing PII, or anytime that a teacher, like we saw in that video, is clicking, I agree to terms of service. Anytime that there's a situation like that, we would need to go in and make sure that we have some sort of a data privacy agreement. So what I want to point you to, and most of you should all know this, hopefully by now, but one of the best resources that I have been able to give to you is if you are logged into SDPC and you are logged into the Utah instance and you click read on, you can go here to where it says this USPA shared drive folder. This shared drive folder is gold. It's where it's where this presentation is going to be. If you want to look at it after the fact, it's where we've got all sorts of tutorials, and all of the model documents that we're going to be talking about today are in this shared drive folder. So if you're following along, please go to this, and you can see that we've got all these different things in here, and there's not a lot, but there's a handful of them, and we're going to be talking about that. Right here, this is the parental consent. DPA Flow Chart we're going to be talking about here in just a second. This is our model email language and the agreement. This is an infographic that should help you go step by step through working with SDPC, and then this is that USPA menu that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. So first and foremost, this DPA Flow Chart. These are the times when you don't need to get a DPA, or do you? So I want you to follow along. The vendor will not receive the student's personally identifiable information. So if the vendor is not going to receive any PII, then you can use the product. Is there a state contract on behalf of LEAs? If there is, which I'm going to show you how to find that here in just a second, then it's good to use. If there's not, then we're going to follow the FERPA exception. One of those FERPA exceptions is parental consent. Now, getting parental consent kind of trumps everything. If you have the parents' consent, then you can use any sort of product, but that can be revoked. And what does it look like for classroom time for a teacher that has X amount of students that don't have their parental permissions signed? We also have this directory information exception where if the vendor is providing a service similar to school photography yearbooks or graduation announcements, then it's good to use. However, as you can see there in red, and Katie wanted me to make this very clear, that we always need to be checking for directory information opt-outs. We can't just share information willy-nilly. The next thing that we want to be paying attention to is this product designed specifically for K through 12 education. If it is, YouTube for Kids, or there was one that we were talking about the other day that was blankety blank education, and I was like, oh, yep, it says education in the name. That's one that we've got to go with. If it's not, if it's general like Wikipedia or YouTube, and it's not designed specifically for education, then it falls under this general audience exception. And then what we have here is something we haven't talked about quite a lot, but if the terms of service meet the requirements, we have a safe harbor badge or a privacy pledge, or they have a SOC report in their security declaration, then we don't need to get a DPA. We haven't talked about this very much, but the menu that we're going to talk about here in a little bit talks quite a bit about this, and it affords a lot more vendors to us than we had previously been using. So if we have one of these in place, then yes, it is good to use. If we don't, then as you can see here, we always default back to parental consent. So if there's ever, whenever we want to get to a yes, parental consent can always get us a yes at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's not our best practice. So step one, the teacher requests the app. So what we've got right here, that's Troy Lunt. If you're famous in my world, then you become a cartoon. He here is talking about the Utah applications menu, which has been recoined the USPA applications menu. I have not yet updated some of these screenshots because 91 slides is a lot to update. However, he's standing next to this applications menu. Now let's go through the menu. So you go read on, the USPA shared drive folder, and right here, that is the USPA applications menu. It is a view only. And as you can see in the top left, whenever that is dated is when it was last updated. I will probably be updating this next week because it'll be the first of the month, and we'll have a whole bunch of new agreements to talk about and to include into this. As you can see here, we have been very specific about this list of applications includes applications that have signed the student privacy pledge, applications that have earned the iKeepSafe badge, applications that are provided via state contracts, USPE, UETN, or the STEM Action Center. Applications that one or more LEAs have vetted and secured, this would be you, and are subscribable via a data privacy agreement. Please note that aside from the state provided products, USPE has not vetted any of these applications. That's where you come in. Educators should check their district or charter's approved application list or talk to their data manager before using the product on this list. Now that is if you choose to share this list with your educators as a menu, as a, hey, if it's on this list, we're good to use it. You just need to tell me about it so that we can put it on our registry appropriately. And I'm going to talk about how to put it on our registry appropriately. So we just discussed that. If you would like to use Control F to search this list, I would suggest it. Control F, type in the first couple of letters of what you're looking for. There are over 900 resources on this menu. So if it's on here, you're good to use it. If it's not on here, we'll get to that in step 3. But if it's on here, these are the next steps that we're going to take. We're going to add these as other types of agreements. So what you see here is that column C is state contract. You can see if one of the state agencies holds a contract with that vendor. If it's got a privacy pledge, you can see there that quite a few of them right there in that screenshot have a privacy pledge or an iKeepSafe badge. If any one of those 3 elements are satisfied, then what we will do is we will go on to SDPC. We're going to add it as a new agreement. We're going to say, yes, we have a signed agreement. And then we are going to select an other type of agreement, as you can see over here on the right. Now, one of these other types of agreements is legal drafted guardian release, and you can find that right there. We're not going to talk about that a whole lot, but that's where you would find that under other types of agreements. But what we are going to talk about are these other types of agreements. This is where you'll find if it's one of those badges or if it's one of the state agreements. It'll be under this other, and then of course you will always add your FERPA justification and FERPA exception and the purpose, and you've added it. Now, this next section here is the ones that you can add via the Exhibit E creator. So column F is what type of agreement it is. The Utah DPA version 2, which you're seeing right there, is the older version. We're trying to get away from those. We are trying to, as you can see there on line 12, the Utah DPA version 1, that is the most updated version of the DPA. That is the one that we would like all of you to be using. Which LEA originated the agreement. And what I want you to pay attention to is the expiration date as well. The expiration date does not come with a badged agreement. The expiration date just comes with one of the DPAs that we've signed. So that's something for you to be cognizant of. And then the last little bit here are the notes. Any sort of like nuance, like this AAP Apple right here, this is with the following restrictions, and it will tell you what those restrictions are because it may not be made available to everybody. Frank, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to follow along, I've linked it in the chat. We're on probably slide 532 so far. All right, what we've got now is Auto Exhibit E Creator. This is how we're going to add one of these ones that are in this via Auto Exhibit E Creator. We're going to go down here on SDPC and we're going to do Auto Exhibit E Creator. Now, one thing that you can do is search in the top right. It's actually a pretty smart search. A couple months ago, it was not such a smart search, but it's gotten a lot better. If the item that you are searching for has an Exhibit E that is subscribable, it will appear below. If it does not have an Exhibit E that is subscribable, there might be a couple of reasons. One, it's already on your registry and you need to delete it and re-enter it via Exhibit E, that there is no agreement in Utah thus far, or that the originating agreement that was on there has expired and thus you cannot subscribe to it. Yeah, 39 or something, Emily. One thing too that I want to point out, this is a new nuance within the registry, as you can see right there where there's that red button, it says view warning. And the warning that it wants you to be aware of is that it is a vendor specific. That means that there are different added vendor terms to that agreement that you may want to take a look at before you decide to jump on that. Sometimes it's them wanting to change dates as far as needing to respond to an audit or needing to respond to certain criteria, but you're going to want to take a look at that when it has that view warning. That is a new feature. Another feature as well that I learned about today is that we are no longer going to be able to add two originating agreements for the same vendor in this state. So if Provo is the first one and has an originating agreement and Granite hurry up and gets another originating agreement, the system will only allow there to be one. So you won't in the future have to subscribe to, which one do I subscribe to? Is it I want this one, or and you have to kind of go back and forth and decide which one you want to do. So the system is changing. It is getting more sophisticated. Always, if you want to add features or have problems with the system, under this help menu right here, there is a way for you to communicate with the developer, and we'd really like for you to share all of that stuff with them so that we know what to fix. Okay, so we're going to create an Exhibit E. You click that button, create Exhibit E. You're going to enter your metadata right here. You're going to enter your justification, your FERPA exception, and your purpose, and boom, you've added that. So step one, teacher requests an app. You found that app on the menu. You either added it under other as a state or a badge, or you added it via subscription via Exhibit E. Congratulations, you satisfied what the teacher is asking you to do. But the teacher's asked you for a new app that's not on this menu. So what are our next steps? Well, our next steps is to go to step 3. Step 3 is searching the national database on SDPC. And remember, I'm going to remind you that you must be logged in. We're going to go to this page, searching the national database. Let's start out on a very 10,000 foot view. We're going to search the national database. And the reason why we're doing this is because we can also see what's going on in Utah, but we're not just stuck looking at what's happening in Utah. Welcome, Tammy. I'm going to post this in the chat. You can join along, and we're recording this. The URL is from SDPC. That is the website. And Christian, I know that we have yet to maybe do a proper onboarding. And so a lot of this may seem somewhat foreign to you, but we can come back to this. But this is the SDPC, the Student Data Privacy Consortium. This is the website where all of the agreements are housed and what you as LEAs can use as your metadata dictionary. We can talk more about those finite details. But what I'd like for you to do is we're going to search the national database for a product. We're going to search for Epic Books for Kids. And typically what has happened is that Epic Books for Kids has not signed DPAs. And there's 3 reasons that I've learned why companies typically will not sign a DPA. One is that they're too small. They're 2 guys that have a company in a garage in Alpine, and they just don't have the capacity. 2, they're just a company that's too big. They're going to be like, sign our proprietary thing, quit bothering us. We're Khan Academy. Our whole business model is to be on top of this. We don't have time for 13,000 school districts, et cetera, et cetera. Or in the case of Epic Books for Kids, their privacy policy is ranked very poorly by Common Sense Media. And this would supersede their privacy policy. So they're not usually in the practice of signing DPAs. However, what this tells me, what we're looking at right now is we're looking at, okay, the state of California, and the agreement is active. And as you can see here, there's an agreement that looks like, April 15th of 2022, that's pretty recent. So California tells me, you know what? There's a pretty good chance that if I was to send an NDPA to Epic Books for Kids, that they would sign it. Now, they may not, but this is kind of the process to which you would begin step 3, is that you're going to go to that national database. You're going to see what's available, see what that vendor is doing in other states, see that it's been declined, see that they aren't allowing that vendor to work in the state because of how they teach or treat teacher accounts versus student accounts, or there's a whole number of reasons why states won't work with it. But you can scroll through and find out via this national database search what's going on in Utah. And if it's still confusing, of course, you can always reach out to me and we can sleuth it out and figure it out together. But what I'm trying to teach all of you today is how to fish so that we can go fishing together and that I'm not fishing for you. So step 3 is the teachers requested an app. It wasn't on the application menu. We looked at the national database. We got some information. We feel comfortable that they're going to sign an agreement. What do we do now? Well, you send an NDPA to the vendor. Now that model email language, I've changed it from a PDF format to a doc format so that it's easier to format and copy and paste and put in your outgoing email. So what you do is you'd put that in your outgoing email. There they are. They're located right there in that shared drive. Please, everybody, bookmark that shared drive. It's going to be really helpful for you, and it's why I created it. So go in, get that information. And then what I advise everybody to do, and I hope that you do this, is get these first 3 pages. The first 3 pages, what I need you to do is, I'm going to go back to this, is we're going to fill out your LEA name right here. It's going to automatically populate everywhere else it's supposed to go. Then we're going to put in our address right here. It's going to go everywhere that it's supposed to go. And then you're going to put your information in here. Please don't sign the agreement before you send it to the vendor. And then these 3 checkboxes are important for us when we look at the agreement and we vet it and audit it ourselves. This is something that you all can really help me do. But what I suggest you do is get a DPA, get pages 1, 2, and 3, fill them out, and then save as. Then you can just start throwing them out across the country as you need. That's step 4. We're kind of blazing through this. Step 1, teacher requests an app. It's not on the menu. Some are on the menu, some aren't. You search the national database, you're sending NDPAs out to vendors. Now we're going to get to step 5. We need to update your registry with a completed agreement. Now I'm stressing this, completed. What does that mean? Well, pages 1, 2, and 3 are completed. we want to make sure that we have the correct agreement type up here. We want an NDPA version 1 unless something drastic has changed in the agreement. Most times it is always going to be an NDPA version 1 unless the vendor comes back and makes changes. You will see here on this next one, these checkboxes help tell us what kind of information is in the contract before we have to get to page 20. It already kind of front loads it. So if there is an exhibit H, which we're going to talk about in a moment, it'll be in here. If there is an exhibit E, it will be in here. And then the last thing is before you put it up on the registry, then you do want to sign it. You don't want to put it on the registry unsigned, or I'm going to send it back to you and you're going to have to do it again. That's me standing next to the body of the agreement. We're not changing anything in the body of this agreement. It's going to stay. And this is a real incentive for us here in Utah. I just got off that national call where they have pages and pages of addendums in California. No vendor wants to deal with that. They like working with us in Utah because we're very light on the load. So we don't change anything in this. All of that's done in Exhibit H. So when you get an agreement back, these are the things I need you to do for me. 1, I need you to make sure that Exhibit A is not left blank. Exhibit A is going to be where a company tells you what they're doing. Essentially, it's that purpose that we put into SDPC when we're talking about FERPA exception, justification, and purpose. What's the purpose of this app? What do? They shouldn't be leaving this blank. If it's a big publisher like Pearson or Houghton Mifflin, or I can't ever say it, McGraw-Hill, then they're going to put all of the different services that they're putting in here, whether it's Alex or different things. But I want you to make sure that this page isn't left blank. Exhibit B, these are those data elements. Now, if this is left blank, you don't need a DPA because there's nothing. Okay, so Tammy, this is being recorded. We'll send it back to you. Thank you so much for sending me all of the stuff. You should be able to push back on Exhibit B. A typing app doesn't necessarily need to know the year of graduation. A typing app doesn't necessarily need to know standardized test scores or even the gender of the child. You should have the ability to push back on some of these elements and say, you know what? I don't think you need these data elements. So we're really encouraging you to take a look at what's on Exhibit B. Exhibit C is definitions, and that's kind of patent. That's not going to change. Exhibit D should be left blank. Exhibit D is a model document for when you sever your partnership with that vendor. So we can just leave it blank. So let's make sure that we leave Exhibit D blank. Here's Exhibit E. The thing that would be really helpful is if we have their email address in this yellow box. This is the widget that makes the Exhibit E button work so that all the things happen just by clicking subscribe. So that's one thing that I would like for everybody to check before they upload, is making sure that this Exhibit E email is completed. And then that we want to make sure that the vendor puts their information down here so that we can communicate with them. We want to leave this bottom area blank because this is where the subscribers, these folks in the back, this is where all of their information is going to go. Okay, so we have our originator here in red, and then all of our subscribing LEAs behind her. Exhibit F, this is all the data security requirements. We want to make sure that this is filled out. This is how they're protecting our information. Exhibit G, we're leaving this blank in Utah because all the information that I was standing next to earlier in the presentation, we're not changing that. So we leave this blank in Utah. And like I said, it's a huge incentive for vendors. They don't have to do a lot of extra stuff. Exhibit H, this is where a vendor comes back and says, I want to change the terms. And you can say, okay, or you can say no. However, if they do come back, then we would go back to page 1 and we would check this box that says, this is where to become, this is in the agreement. And then this is what makes it a vendor specific agreement, is if H is checked. It's not a vendor specific agreement unless we have information on Exhibit H. Once you've gone through and vetted this contract, you're going to go to add a new agreement. Now, yes, we have a signed contract as usual, but instead of going over here to these other types of agreements, what we're going to focus on is we are the originator with an exhibit. Okay, so we are going to click this one, and it's going to walk us through the same one, unless we are a vendor specific with an agreement. And it's going to walk us through the same steps where we're going to put in all of our metadata and all of our FERPA justification and purpose information. Renewals. This is how you look for renewals. This is one of the reasons why this is one of the big focuses that we're going to have, and I'm going to be working with a lot of you on, is making sure that the agreements that are expiring are renewed, and that we can keep the database clean. But once you log on, there's this little section right here where it says view expiring agreements, which is really cool. And it'll take you to, in 90 days, these are the agreements that you have originated or that you are subscribed to that are expiring. It'll help you become cognizant of that. Another way that you can play around and figure out what to do with expiring agreements is by clicking Manage Agreements under your district agreements, clicking on this yellow button that's new. This is a new feature for those of you that haven't used SDPC in the last few months. View Inactive Agreements. And what it does is it'll bring up all the agreements that you have that are inactive so that you can work with me or with somebody else within your LEA to get those updated. It's very important for the consortium that we have all of that updated. So step one, the teacher requests an app. The first thing that we do is go to that applications menu and we cross our fingers and we hope that it's on there. If it is, we've got slides that show us how to put that on. If it's not on there, we go to step 3. We've got slides that show step 3 through 5, how to get those new agreements vetted and up and on the registry. And then step 6 is how to keep it all just flowing. But this is the yes process. And there still might be an opportunity for no. If they're not on the national database and they're not going to sign a DPA, what happens if we still don't have an agreement? Well, that's when we get parental consent. And I know that it's hard and I know that it's tedious, and depending upon the size of your LEA, that's what we would do. Or we would find a parallel program, something that does almost the exact same thing. I mean, how many different typing apps do we really need? Epic Books for Kids. Do we have Super Niños, Libros for Niños, which is very the same, but almost a little bit different, that will sign a DPA? I mean, if you're a big LEA like Alpine and you want to get something for second graders, you're not going to do the parental consent route. But if you're a smaller LEA and you have only X amount of kids that are going to work on a certain product, that might be a route that you want to take. Ladies and gentlemen, I just burned through 90 slides in 30 minutes. I thought we were going to be doing this for 2 hours. I hope that there was at least something on here that was relevant to your life. Let's open up for discussion.
Hey, John.
Hey,
Before I
Troy.
forget my questions.
Okay.
So the updated agreement, so the expiration date. So the originator goes and gets a new one and applies that. Does it automatically update everybody else's who is subscribed to it?
I don't
What's
think
the
it
action
does.
that you do?
I think that that's one thing that we're going to have to technologically work on. That's what one of those renewal pieces is. How does that trickle down effect? How do people learn that that's happening? So that's definitely something on my radar, because I don't want the opposite to happen. I don't want somebody to change it and then to have 20 people attached to the old one when there's a new one that already exists. So those 20 people are going to have to go in, delete their instance, and then go ahead and resubscribe. I mean, that's one of those parts of the glacier that I'm really trying to get at.
And is part of that including, so if I have one that's expiring and I go and I get a new one, it's my responsibility then to delete the old one. It's not just going to replace it. I need to delete the old one.
Yeah, I believe the old one.
So then we've got a whole bunch of people that are connected to the old one. So this happened to me.
Right.
Like I think Clint said, I'm only going to have 1,100 apps, and he had 1,101 and he deleted one. Well, I happened to be connected to that one, and I was like in no man's land out there.
Yep.
And so that's just, again, a process that we have to be watching for, and we have to figure it out.
And I think that what my hope is that like they implemented something that was supposed to email everybody that says, hey, you've got an agreement that's supposed to expire. I've been told that it's working in other states. I've never received concrete feedback from our alliance that they were experiencing any sort of update that like, hey, John, your agreement with SuperLearn is expiring in 90 days. You need to update it. And then what it's supposed to do is send everybody that's subscribing an update saying, hey, the originating agreement that you're subscribing to. I mean, it's a whole infrastructure that I don't know if it's even working, because I haven't heard from any of you users that you've actually even heard anything about it. But my hope is that there's a way for it to be communicated to you, and that, I mean, I guess that's going to be my task over the next little bit, is developing some sort of a procedure or mechanism or best practice for us to keep each other in the loop as far as, hey, Troy, Clint has got a new agreement and you are subscribed on. Can you go in and delete and re-add or something like that? Whether it's something that I do, or maybe maybe now that there's only me and Katie and at the agency, maybe it's something that I mean, that's not something that I'm wanting. I mean, I'm wanting to put on the shoulders of users like all of you, that you're going to have to be in charge of that. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody has kind of a discerning eye and they're paying attention to stuff like that. And it shouldn't happen in big chunks. Like, it shouldn't be like 30 that you have to do all at once. I'm kind of thinking that it's going to be a little bit of a trickle effect, but that's definitely something that concerns me.
One last quick question, and then I'll go on mute again. But this goes back to the USPA that you displayed.
Yeah.
So the I Keep Safe and the Privacy Pledge, what is sourcing that? Are you waiting for us to go tell you about it, or are you researching those, or are you looking someplace to get that information so that if it's here, we know that you've scanned the world and you've got them all there?
So the way that these work is that, and it's still gonna be dependent upon you using your gut, and why we were a little bit more definitive up here that these have not been vetted by us. So I Keep Safe has this badge. And so what this does is that from what I was told by our outgoing CPO before he outgoed, was that our attorney generals, in relation to the audit clause, that there needs to be like a third-party audit, that these badges satisfied that clause. Was that these badges worked as, certified products. These are all of these products. So what I've done is I've gone through here and I've translated what's on this website, excuse me, to this. So whatever in this column was something that I manually put into this column from that website. Same thing goes for this privacy pledge. And actually the student privacy pledge, this is from the organization that we lost David Soleil to, was the Future of Privacy Forum, as you can see down here, the Future of Privacy Forum. So that's a national think tank in Washington, DC, and they've gone through and vetted these. So what you can do is you can go in and take a look, like, ABC Mouse for schools is on here. I haven't seen ABC Mouse signing DPAs, but for the purposes of what we're looking at and what we've determined, that if it's got a privacy pledge or an I Keep Safe badge, then that's something that you can put on your registry under in use privacy pledge or in use I Keep Safe badge. I hope that, and the goal of that is, like I've said, that we've gone up to 919 different vendors in here now. Right.
So our research to see if it has a privacy pledge or an I Keep Safe badge can be here. We don't have to go out and scan.
Okay. Nope. 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 That's my goal is, I mean, that's part of my tedious management of this product is to each month, what I'm going to do next Monday is I'm going to go into SDPC and I'm going to pull, and you'll all get an email that says, hey, it's a new month. These are all the DPAs that were signed in your state in September. And I'm going to go in and pull that. And then I'm going to go into each one of those new DPAs and audit it the same way I just went over with everybody. Does it have an exhibit A that's filled out? Are there signatures in the right places? The exhibit E doing what it's supposed to? Do they have data elements in exhibit B? And if those things aren't true, then I kick that back out to you guys, or I secretly throw them in Adobe Acrobat and change them myself and correct them and put them up. And but that's part of the process. And once that's done, then I go through and I update this menu that we're looking at. I don't know if we're still looking at this menu. I'm still sharing the screen. Troy, or someone, can you guys verify that we're
you're sharing? I can see the USPA there.
Okay. Yeah. So and I keep it updated. You know, it'll probably say 10/3/22 up here pretty soon. I'm going to go through here and sort out all of the ones that have expired, as you can see here. And you know, this may be something worth paying attention to. These are the ones that have expired in the last couple of months. So maybe if you look at this and you see your name on here, you can be like, oh crud, I've got something that could be on this menu that I've got to go out and take a look at. So that might be something that I can build into this sheet as some sort of way to communicate the things that have expired and things that we need to kind of get on and re-upped. But as far as you know, like I said, the procedure, what I'm really hoping for is that you guys, and really what it comes down to is I want it to be as efficient as possible for everybody. This should not be a part of your job that takes up more than 5 to 10% of your jobs. So following this mechanism, you know, the teacher requests the app. What do you do then? Please go to that menu. If it's added, if it's on there, if it's not on there, go to the national database. And then if it's not on there, then we've got to get a new agreement. And if they're not going to sign a new agreement, then we've got to figure out an alternative. But really, it should be that, I hate to say, knock on wood, or for Micah, hopefully, that that's what we're doing. I mean, I want this to be easy for you folks. And I know that there's been a lot of requests here in the last couple of weeks because school has started and there's all sorts of new tools out there. And please, for those of you that came late, there's this video right here that you can share with your users. We call it Ask Before You app. I know that Kendra Cups in Grand, she loves sending it out to her teachers that just like, hey, you need to talk to your data manager. And the teacher's like, well, who's your data manager? Who's my data manager? And they're like, well, I'm your data manager. Hello. Really what it's about is giving you guys tools to feel confident. And yeah, just so you know, Dave, it's a team of John and Katie and Melissa Preziosi right now, who's new to our team, but dealing with internal agency data governance. So a lot of this other stuff doesn't really fall on her plate. But it's just Katie and I for the most part. So if you do need help, reach out to us. This did not take as much time as I thought it would. So I will be posting this up. I will be including it on page 1 of the presentation. If there are any other questions, please let me have them. If not, then let's start our weekends early. Wow. Christian, we can set up a time to go over this stuff if you'd like. Just send me an email and I've got pretty much the week open going forward. I see some new names on here, some old names. Annie from Granite, hello. You're doing so much work out there. I love it. Thank you so much. You're keeping us all organized. Troy keeps us organized.
I do have another question for you. Sorry.
All right, give it to me.
So this gets back to being the originator on the NDPA.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a baseball question.
No, I can bring you a baseball question. The Dodgers will win the World Series, right? Question mark. So
okay, you're originating an agreement.
Yeah, and no matter how many times I go through this with them, because a lot of times it's new, and I tell them don't touch page D. They
Right.
still do. Do I have
Yeah.
to send it back to them?
No, it's a preference. If I'm going through, like I'm looking at A, I'm looking at B, I'm looking at E, I'm looking at H. I'm not looking at F really, because there aren't any. In the next iteration, F is going to have a lot more teeth to it, but there aren't any established guidelines for a lot of the things that F is even asking for. At least that's what I've been told by people that are smarter than me. So when it comes to D, I mean, D is really something for you, the originating LEA, if you want to go back to them and sign it. I mean, I guess the only thing is that somebody signs it that may not be there in the future with the company, and I don't know, but D is not one that I'm going to ding you on, like send it back. But A, B, E, and H are the ones that are A, B, E, H.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Troy. If anybody has any questions, let them rip. If not, I'm going to put this thing on YouTube. I'll send you all a link. But I'm going to hang out until all of you disappear, because you may not want to ask a question in front of everybody. I don't know. I'm not your mom. Thanks, Christian. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. Doing great work out there, everybody. Adios. Go Dodgers. Thanks, Richard.